The alien woman stood in the observation deck, and her silver skin reflected the starlight, like liquid metal under moonshine, and she watched the human colony below with eyes that held secrets older than Earth itself, and her name was Kayla, and she belonged to the Varani people who had ruled this sector of space for 10,000 years. Before humans even learned to make fire, she was tall and graceful with features that seemed almost human except for the way her eyes shifted colors with her emotions and the intricate patterns that glowed beneath her skin when she felt strong feelings. And right now those patterns pulsed with something humans might call sadness. But in her language there were 17 different words for the kinds of sorrow she experienced. Said human settlement on the planet Novaris had been there for only 3 years, and Kayla had been assigned to observe them as part of the Varani Cultural Study Program, and what she had discovered had shaken everything she believed about the universe and about her own superior civilization. Her people lived for centuries, and they had technology that could reshape matter with thought, and they had never known war or hunger or disease for thousands of generations. And they believed themselves to be the pinnacle of evolution and the rightful guides of younger species like humanity. But then she had met Amimi Martinez, was a colony administrator, and she was 32 years old, and she had brown eyes that crinkled when she laughed, and dark hair she kept tied back in a practical bun. And she worked 16-hour days managing food distribution and conflict resolution and infrastructure planning, and she did it all with a smile that never quite reached. Her tired eyes. Kayla had been observing Amy for 6 months now, and something had changed inside her, and something she could not name in any of her 17 languages. The Varani did not form attachments easily, and emotions were considered inefficient distractions from logic and purpose, and Kayla had been raised to believe that her feelings should serve her goals and never the other way around. And yet here she was standing in the dark watching lights twinkle in the human settlement and feeling her chest ache in a way that made no logical sense. She remembered the day Amy had invited her to dinner. It was a simple meal in Amy's small prefab quarters, and the food was basic protein paste flavored with synthetic spices because supply ships only came twice a year and luxuries were rare. And Kayla had eaten cuisine prepared by the greatest chefs in the galaxy, but somehow this simple meal tasted like morning meat. Had talked about her daughter back on Earth and about how she had left her with Amy's mother so she could take this assignment and earn enough money to pay for the girl's education, and her eyes had gone distant when she spoke. And Kayla saw something in that distance that made her patterns glow bright blue. It was sacrifice. Varani did not sacrifice, and they optimized, and they calculated, and they achieved maximum efficiency. But they did not give up pieces of themselves for others, and they did not carry pain. Like a badge of honor, Amy carried so much pain. Kayla had watched her mediate a dispute between two families over water rations, and Amy had given part of her own ration to the family with children, and she had done it without announcing it and without asking for recognition. And Kayla had accessed the colony records later and discovered Amy did this often. She had watched Amy sit with old Henry Cooper when he was dying, and there were no doctors available because the colony only had two medical staff, and they were dealing with an outbreak in Sector 7, and Amy had held Henry's hand for hours until he passed. And she had sung old Earth songs to him in a voice that cracked with grief. And afterwards she had gone back to work. She had watched Amy organize a birthday party for little Sophie Grant using scraps and recycled materials, and turning the community hall into something magical for one evening. And Sophie had laughed, and Amy had smiled, but Kayla saw it now, and that smile that never reached her eyes. Her eyes whispered goodbye. Even when she smiled, Kayla finally understood what she was seeing. And Amy was already gone in some fundamental way, and she had given so much of herself to others that there was hardly anything left, and she was a candle burning at both ends, and she would burn out completely. And soon Varani had protocols for this, and they had studied human psychology extensively. And Kayla should file a report and recommend Amy be relieved of duty and sent back to Earth for psychiatric evaluation and psychological reconditioning, and that was the logical thing and the efficient thing. But Kayla found herself walking down to the settlement instead. The night air of Novaris was thin and cold, and it smelled like the mineral deposits that made the soil red, and Kayla did not need environmental protection, but she felt the cold anyway, and felt it in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. She found Amy in her office, and it was past midnight colony time, and Amy was reviewing supply manifest on a flickering screen, and her face was illuminated by the pale blue light. And she looked so small and so tired and so unbearably human. Amy looked up when Kayla entered, and her face shifted into that professional smile, and the one that did not reach her eyes. Do you do this to yourself? And Kayla Eskidemi blinked. And do what? Destroy yourself for people who will never know what you gave up. The smile faded, and Amy looked down at her hands. And someone has too, and she said quietly, "It is not an answer." Me was quiet for a long time, and outside the window the stars burned cold and distant, and finally she spoke. And my daughter asks me why I left, and she asks every time we video call, and she does not understand that I'm doing this for her, and maybe one day she will, and maybe she will just remember that her mother was never there. I could quit and return to Earth. Me shook her head. And there are 347 people in this colony, and 62 of them are children, and if I leave, the resource allocation system will fall apart, and it will take 6 months to train my replacement, and people will suffer. You are suffering. Me looked up and met Kayla's eyes, and this time there was something fierce in her gaze, and I can carry it, and she said, and they cannot, and that is the difference. Kayla felt her patterns flare bright gold, and gold for revelation and for understanding, and for something her people had forgotten millennia. Agath Varani had eliminated suffering by eliminating the capacity for this kind of love, and this kind of terrible, beautiful, self-destructive love that made beings like Amy give everything and expect nothing and burn themselves to ashes to keep others warmer. People lived for centuries in comfort and achievement, and they had art and science and philosophy. But they had nothing like this, and nothing like the fierce, desperate, tender thing she saw in Amy's eyes. I am going to file a report, and Kayla said, and I am going to tell my superiors that humans should not be guided by the Varani, and we should be guided by Yaomi. Laughed, and it was a broken sound. And you are Insanino, and Kayla said, and stepping closer, and I am seeing clearly for the first time in my very long life, and my people have forgotten what you never lost. And we think survival is the highest goal, and you understand that some things matter more, like what, like being there for each other, and like holding hands with the dying, and like singing songs to ease their passing, and like giving your water to children, and like sacrificing your own happiness so your daughter can have a better future, and like smiling even when everything inside you is screaming. Tears ran down Amy's face, and she did not wipe them away. And I am so tired. And she whispered, "No, we miss my daughter. No, we do not think I can keep doing this. You do not have to." And Kayla said, "And I am going to help you, and I am going to bring Varani resources to this colony, and I am going to assign medical staff and engineers and educators. And I am going to make sure you can rest. We would you do that because you taught me something more valuable than anything in our archives, and you taught me that strength is not measured in years lived or technology wielded, and it is measured in what you are willing to carry for others." Sammy closed her eyes, and more tears came. "And thank you." And she said, "Oh, not thank me." And Kayla said, "And teach me instead. And teach me how to care the way you do, and teach me how to see people the way you see them, and teach me how to love something more than efficiency and logic." Me opened her eyes and looked at this alien woman with her shifting eyes and glowing patterns, and something passed between them, and something that transcended species and culture and evolution. Over the following months, Kayla kept her promise, and Varani resources flooded into Novaris, and Amy finally got to rest, and finally got to sleep more than 4 hours, and finally got to call her daughter without guilt eating at her chest. And Kayla learned, and she learned how to sit with people in their pain, and learn how to celebrate small victories, and learn how to value the things that could not be measured or optimized. Edge learned that Amy's eyes still whispered goodbye, even when she smiled, but now there was something else there too, and something like hope, and like maybe she would stay after all. Varani Council was not pleased with Kayla's report, and they called her radical and emotional, and compromised by human contact, but they could not deny what she had documented, and that human civilization had something they lacked, and that maybe guidance should flow both ways. Kayla stayed on Novars, and she stayed because Amy needed a friend, and because the colony needed resources, and because she was learning to be something more than logical and something more than efficient.